Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Thursday morning webinar series. I am Chloe Tetro, the coaching lead here with Ready Care. This morning, we're going to look at the wild and wonderful world of protein. So what is protein and why should it be a staple in your diet? We're going to have a quick look at what it is, what's involved with it. I'm sure we've all heard of people talking constantly about getting more protein, prioritizing protein, but really today's about demystifying that somewhat and really saying, okay, what is it about protein that's so important? What does it do in the body? And how can it be of benefit to have a little bit more in the diet? I really kind of answer any questions around what it is outside of just this wonderful bodybuilding type supplement. So of course it's brilliant for bodybuilders, but it isn't just for bodybuilders. It's a cornerstone nutrient and affects everything from your muscles and metabolism to your hormones, your brain, and your immune system. So we'll really have a look at what is going on under the hood with our good old friend protein. So protein is a fundamental nutrient in the body. Proteins are often called the building blocks of life, and for good reasons. So if you think of building a Lego house, if you don't have the blocks, you're not going to do a great house out of it. And it's the same kind of idea with proteins. So proteins break down into what are called amino acids. And amino acids are kind of one of the simpler component parts. I'll get my little slide up here. So there's some of the kind of more component parts of the protein. Once they're broken down in our system, once they go inside and go through our digestive system, proteins are broken down into amino acids. So what are some of the fundamental roles of protein? So we mentioned one, and this is the one that is most well known where protein is concerned: building and repairing muscle. So it provides the raw materials, those lovely amino acids, for building, for repairing, and for maintaining muscle tissue. So this is vital not just for athletes, but for everybody, since we're constantly breaking down our muscle and rebuilding our muscles. So in other words, protein keeps your muscles strong, allowing you to stay active and maintain strength throughout the day. So it drives metabolism. And this is one we're getting into the kind of nitty gritty of things now, where it might not be as familiar for some people. So many enzymes and hormones are made up of proteins, which fuel your metabolic reactions and keep your body's chemistry running smoothly. Proteins will help in breaking down food and generating energy for cells. We all remember that little mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cells, and the proteins are there to help as well. So protein is what keeps your body's engine running efficiently, converting food into fuel, which helps you burn that fuel more efficiently. So one for, I was going to say one for women, but actually across the board. So hormones production and balance, and why it's particularly important for women of any age to start to prioritize proteins a little bit more in their diet. So number of hormones in your body are proteins or peptide based, such as insulin, growth hormones, and glucagon. So these hormonal proteins act as messengers, and they coordinate lots of different functions in the body, like regulating your blood sugar with your insulin, your growth, and your metabolism from the other. So without enough protein, your body can't properly make some of the hormones that are essential and that keep everything from your blood sugar taking over to your mood in balance. So very, very, very important. The brain function aspect of things then. So amino acids, the little Lego blocks that I mentioned, they're needed to produce neurotransmitters. So they're your brain's chemical messengers. For example, the amino acid tryptophan makes serotonin, and we would know serotonin as the kind of feel-good neurotransmitter, helps with your mood. And it makes tyrosine, which then makes dopamine, which helps for focus. So if low moods and low focus, it's very, very important to get the protein levels up. Lots of research shows that inadequate protein intake is linked to cognitive decline, while higher protein can improve memory and mental function in older adults and across the board, actually. So in other words, protein feeds your brain. It helps create the chemicals that influence your mood, your memory, and your alertness. And last little one in this section is the immune health aspect of things. So your immune system relies on protein to build antibodies and immune cells. So these proteins identify and fight off infections, things like viruses and bacteria. So if you don't get enough protein, your body has a harder time manufacturing these critical defense molecules. So protein is your immune system's building material. It helps your body to fight illness and it helps it to heal faster. So getting into it a little bit further here with regards weight management, right? So this is one that a lot of people will be familiar with. They might say, look, I'm trying to look after my weight and I've been told to eat more protein. How are they kind of fitting in with each other and what's the deal here? So one reason high protein diets are popular for weight loss is that protein has a unique effect on appetite and metabolism. So let's have a look at that in a little bit more detail. So protein increases satiety, basically keeps you fuller longer. So eating proteins triggers the release of appetite regulating hormones. A higher protein intake raises levels of satiety hormones, so feeling full hormones like GLP-1, which you might recognize the little are they acronyms? Is that what they call it? A GLP-1 from the likes of Ozempic, Wegovy, all of those kind of weight loss injections, and it lowers the hunger hormone ghrelin. So the hormone shift will very, very much help to reduce hunger and cravings. So in other words, the protein-rich meals help you to feel fuller for longer, and it curbs those kind of between meal snack attacks. We'd all kind of go, the fridge is singing a siren song to me. So you naturally eat fewer calories without that kind of feeling deprived feeling that can go along with some other dietary restrictions that are out there. So it boosts your metabolism in a process known as thermogenesis. So thermo, heat, scaling system, and genesis, production. So protein has a high thermic effect, meaning your body burns quite a few calories by just digesting and processing it. So around 20 to 30% of protein's calories are used during the initial digestion phase, which is much more than carbohydrates, which would be about 5% to 10%, or fat, which is 0 to 3%. So protein also helps maintain your lean muscle mass even during calorie cuts when people are eating a lower amount of calories, whether they're on a specific gym program or whatever it may be. And muscle tissue burns more calories at rest. So even outside of your workout routines, walks, activities, when you have a high level of protein in your system, even at rest, the body has to work a lot harder to digest all of that protein. So you end up burning more calories at rest than you would do without a kind of high calorie, high protein diet, excuse me. So eating more protein makes your body work harder, burn more calories, and to digest this food. It helps you to preserve the muscle that you have so that your metabolism stays in that kind of revved up aspect even when you're at rest, which will help as a knock-on effect if one of your targeted goals is to lose weight more effectively. And effectively being the operative term, because if one wanted to just lose weight, right, you could shackle yourself to a wall and not eat for 2 to 3 weeks. You're going to lose weight that way. Is it going to be a healthy way? Absolutely not. There are healthy ways to do weight loss. Upping your protein is one of them. And I would say one of the major ones there. Lowering your carbohydrates, of course, would be the sister suggestion that I'd pop in there. But essentially, not only are you going to feel fuller for longer, you're going to be less prone to snacking. Your body's going to be burning calories even at rest. Your muscle mass is going to be staying nice and strong, and it's going to have a massive positive knock-on effect for your immune function, blood sugars, hormones, sleep, all of the different things that can really play havoc with weight loss. So if we look at proteins linking to the likes of mood stabilization, if your mood is a little bit more balanced, it means your stress levels aren't sky high. If your stress levels aren't sky high, you're less likely to be craving sugars, snacks, and high carb type of foods. You're more likely to get a better night's sleep. So the cycle there will continue positively. So And any questions you guys have, please pop them into the chat section as always. So whey protein is essential if we're looking at a low carb diet. When you're limiting your carbs, protein becomes even more crucial to fill in the nutritional gaps. Now, I would advocate, and as I'm sure it's like, spoiler alert, I'm sure you know that now at this stage, with the low carb approach of things and the massive benefits that it has across the board. So on a lower carb type of eating protocol, having more protein in there is going to massively stabilize blood sugar and energy. And a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people would go towards a low carb way of eating because they're trying to avoid the likes of pre-diabetes, diabetes, difficulty with their blood pressure, difficulty with their cholesterol and their liver health. So being on a low carbohydrate diet is going to help that anyway. But how is protein going to benefit it even more? So it stabilizes your blood sugars and energy. So unlike the high carb foods, protein has a minimal impact on your glucose levels. It has what's known as a pulsatile effect. Instead of getting the spikes and crashes, it just does its little bloop, bloop along the way. So it digests slowly and leads to a gradual release of energy. On a low carb diet, this is really key because the protein provides glucose in a very slow, controlled manner via gluconeogenesis, which is a fancy way of saying the process of creating glucose from protein. And that won't cause the spikes. So if you are looking after your blood sugar levels for any of the gorgeous conditions that I mentioned a while ago, the low carb aspect of things in combination with a higher protein type of diet is really going to help that stabilization of your insulin and blood sugar levels. So where am I going with my slides? This is like slide bingo. There's always something with my slides every week. So protein for longevity. So when we look at protein's role in longevity, it's not just about short-term goals, like losing weight or stabilizing your blood sugars, even though they're brilliant. It's also linked to long-term health and longevity. So it prevents muscle loss, also known as sarcopenia and frailty. So as we age, it's very natural that we lose muscle mass and strength if we don't counteract it. The more we age, the more we naturally lose it. So it is a case of, what do people say, use it or lose it? But it does need to be kind of counterbalanced as we age. So protein, when combined with activity, is our best defense against age-related muscle loss. So experts note that a low muscle and low protein intake, spoiler alert, you'll have guessed it, are major risk factors for things like illness, frailty, higher mortality in older adults. So by contrast, flip side, getting enough protein then helps seniors. And, in this particular study, I think they took anyone over the age of 70 as a senior. But look, that's another story for another day. But it helps any person of any age stay mobile, independent and resilient, which becomes more important as an individual ages. So if you or a loved one, parent, friend, family member are looking to look after their stability, their muscle mass, to help with the longevity, cognitive function, getting plenty of protein in is really vital. The protein helps older adults stay strong and active. It keeps the body active, which can prevent the weakness that can come on as health declines. And think of protein as fuel for maintaining vitality. So it's linked to longer life, which I mentioned there in just a second ago. So lots of different studies out there suggest that higher protein intake is associated with better survival. There's one by PubMed if you're looking particularly. For example, a study of adults over 85, brought the bracket up ever so slightly this time, found that those consuming the most protein had about half the risk of death compared to those eating the least protein. So protein intake has been tied to better cognitive health in aging. And I would say combining that with a low carb type of diet is really going to look after cognitive health, memory, processing very well. So seniors with higher protein diets tend to have lower risk of dementia and better memory function. People who eat adequate protein tend to live longer, healthier, likely because they maintain muscle, which will help with stabilization of the body. And an awful lot of senior folks will find themselves suffering as secondary conditions that can happen from a fall. So it really, really helps to keep the body stable, strong, and minimize the impacts of things like falls, because the other aspect is protein will help to create bone density as well as muscle mass. So it's a good way to keep the muscles and the bones stability nice and healthy. So practical strategies, as I fold down for these, I always feel like I'm speaking very, very quickly on these talks. But if you ever do have questions and comments, please do pop them in. And that goes for people watching back as well. So protein intake strategies, eat more protein. So knowing that protein's important is one thing, but how do you make sure to actually get enough of it in your day-to-day? So know your protein needs. It helps to have a rough protein target. So RDA, and RDA is this way and that way because it's disputable measure sometimes, but the recommended dietary allowance, which I will say an RDA is a minimum. It's not a maximum, it's a minimum. It's not something to aim for and to stop. It's one that you should at least have the minimum of that. It's about 0.8 grams of protein per kg of body weight. So roughly about 56 grams a day for somebody who's 56, 58, 59 kg. You can work it out. I'm terrible at doing maths in my head, as I've just demonstrated. For optimal health, particularly if you're active or if you're aiming for weight loss, many experts will recommend much higher amounts. So around 1.2 to 2 grams per kg of your body weight. So that's 1.2 to 2 grams of protein per kg of your body weight. And remember, that's your minimum amount. So try to include protein in every meal rather than having kind of one protein heavy dinner, for example, and skimpy protein then earlier in the day. Spread your protein intake across your meals. It's going to be a lot easier for you to reach your specific targets if you're not trying to get them all in the one fell swoop at dinner time by eating half a cow or whatever it may be. If you're having interdispersed protein throughout your day, an egg is about 6 grams, great, but not a huge amount. So making sure that you're having it whenever possible. If you're going for little snacks between, try to go for proteins as well and prioritize your proteins. Eat your proteins first. That way, those are the things that you're filling up on, as opposed to having, particularly carbohydrates, potatoes, rice, pasta, anything like that as a thing that you're filling up on and then leaving the rest behind. Try to go for the proteins first. It's a fairly simple habit, but it can naturally help to control your appetite, blood sugar, and prioritizing when you're hungriest. It makes sure that you don't accidentally fill up on any other types of foods. If you start your meal with your protein, you're guaranteed that you're getting it, basically. And keep your protein snacks handy. It doesn't have to be things like protein bars because, give and take with protein bars. They're great for specific things. They're quite high in they're not a whole food, basically. They usually have a stream of ingredients and artificial sweeteners that some people can tolerate, other people can't, and it can give them, trap wind or various other digestive discomforts that happen with that. So, but having things like cold cuts of meat, boiled eggs, there are some protein bars out there that are kind of more, a little bit more natural with not as many kind of multi-syllabled ingredients, things like that, things like cheese, nuts, jerky, pork scratchings, great one in there. Basically anything that's going to have a little bit of extra protein in there is going to help along your day. And mix up your sources. It doesn't always have to be from the same sources. Having things like, a variety in there is going to help rather than hinder. So, If you're usually a big meat eater, switch it up and have something like tofu, legumes, a little bit of fish, all these types of things. They're all going to build up throughout your day and help you to not get bored out of your box by the same little beef patty that you have every day, like I did for ages a few years ago. I'll have my little beef patty now when it's done. If you're having an omelette at breakfast, a salad with chicken at lunch, and a stir fry with shrimp or tofu at dinner, for example, that would be an example of protein spread throughout the day. Plan your meals around protein if possible. So figure out what you want to have as the kind of centerpiece of the dish, which is essentially that protein, and dress it up then afterwards. So to recap, the protein excuse me, is a really, really powerful nutrient, which I hope I've given a little bit of a background on in today's session. So especially in the context of longevity and health across the board, from things like muscle health, metabolic rate, hormone balance, brain function, and immune defense. It keeps all of our critical systems ticking, keeps them going optimally. It's also really going to be a massive, massive asset if you are looking to lose a little bit of weight and bring up that thermogenesis in the body. It will massively help with cognitive function, healthy aging, and longevity. Right, so I will stop talking about protein now. I'd say I've melted the protein now into people enough. If you have any questions or anything like that, please do pop them on. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week, have fun playing around with proteins, and we will chat to you guys next week. Have a lovely rest of your day now. Bye.